Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be diving into the latest releases as of the early morning of October 5th, because there's going to be some more after this, but there's been some more information about what we can expect with the upcoming Trailmakers update. More specifically, some of the new space-based blocks for building vehicles and controlling vehicles. And out of the 4 blocks that they went into in the latest Dev Diary, 3 of them, I think, are going to be some of the biggest game changers when it comes to expanding the ease of building and capabilities of the quality of creations from all different genres, not just air-based creations like helicopters and planes and space-based creations, but even some land vehicles like motorcycles and unicycles or anything that requires balance. So let's hop over to the Dev Diary, and I'm going to show you exactly what has me so excited. Okay, so over on the Flashbulb Games YouTube channel, they have a 32-minute Dev Diary number 7 here that goes into these inertia blocks that they are calling them, which is going to basically revolutionize spaceflight capabilities. And this is a 32-minute video, but I have gone through and highlighted all of my favorite parts, but I will be leaving a link to the full video if you want to get all of the really juicy details. But I'm going to be covering everything that I found interesting, and I think that you're going to find interesting too. So the first thing is, when it comes to spaceflight, there are different types of spaceflight that could have happened in Trailmakers, different ways to approach it, and here is them talking a little bit about that now, and then I'll comment on it after I play this clip.
And we chose to go with space, and when you do that, you have to kind of figure out what kind of space are we trying to bring to our players. And for Trailmakers, that was a lot of meetings, a lot of talks, and we want to really deliver on the highest quality and the most fun space. And I think that is a keyword here, right? So the whole debate was like, how close to real physics should we go, or how close to arcadey physics should we go, right?
So this is where it was really interesting, because it seems like it could have gone 2 ways. And what they mean by real physics and arcadey physics is real space is honestly kind of boring and also extremely high difficulty, because there's 0 drag, there's 0 atmosphere, there's 0 gravity. So in order to redirect a spacecraft, you have to just change all momentum from one direction to another. If you want to make a 90-degree turn in space, there's just a lot that goes into that. However, if you think about it more like Star Wars style, you see them flying around as if they're in an atmosphere, and actually like an airplane would fly around. You point your nose in one direction, you're going to point into that direction. And what I really like about what the devs decided to do was they're going to give us the best of both worlds. We're going to have both realistic space physics, and with these new inertia blocks, the way that they've gotten around that is there are blocks you can place on your vehicles that allow you to simulate more arcadey Star Wars style physics. So let's get into specifically what these blocks are all about. So the first thing that they showed off in the Dev Diary is probably, I said out of the 4 things, there's 3 of them that are pretty big game changers. This one I feel like is not going to be much of a game changer here, and that is the thruster.
We have a thruster.
We have the new thruster, yeah.
There it is.
So that's pretty much all you need to know about that. There it is. So from what I can tell, they didn't really say much about this, because I really think it's pretty much just another aesthetic of thruster to fit space. As far as I can tell, it doesn't seem to be adding any extra functionality. They didn't mention anything about any extra functionalities for the space thruster. I just think it's a cool space looking thruster. But so this one, cool that we're getting it. But the excitement is really coming in the next 3 blocks, so let's move on to those. Okay, the first block is the Gyro. This is what the Gyro looks like. Let me have them give a quick introduction to it.
This is a gyro block. This will help you, if it's placed like this, it will help you tilt like this. I hope it makes sense.
All right, I'll try to decode a little bit about what I think he's trying to explain here. So first of all, it has attachment points everywhere. You can see all the attachment points on this side. You can see attachment points on this side, So I think it's going to be very easy to put into your vehicles. But what this is essentially going to do is replace the helicopter servos that we use for auto balancing and adding steering into aerial vehicles like helicopters and stuff. And I think it's probably going to be a lot more effective than a helicopter servo because it is specifically designed for that. So the way it is right now, you can see that if you were to spin this around its center point, it would spin in this direction. So if you imagine that that this face right here is the back of the creation and then the other face is the front of the creation, this would essentially be roll. And you can input inputs into it, controls, you can assign controls to it to roll right and left. So that if we flip this 90 degrees to face to the right and left of the vehicle, then essentially you would be adding pitch because you would be rolling the nose down and the nose up from the orientation of this. And then of course you could probably add in yaw by just placing it flat and horizontal and just inputting those controls. So essentially you no longer have to have all of that helicopter servo stuff going on where they have a kind of annoying ramp up in power as they go, which I think works good for helicopter blades, but doesn't work good for actual controls. And there's some other features about this, which is going to be particularly useful, I think, in space and everywhere else in general. All right, so the next part about this that I find really interesting is what he says right here.
And it comes with a built-in damping to slow down spinning, as well as rotational control.
Yeah, so right there, what I think that means is when you press the button to turn this gyro, to turn your craft, it's obviously going to cause your craft to start rotating in a certain direction. Now, when you let go of the button, in space, you would expect a conservation of momentum. Like if you were just using thrusters and you put thrust in this direction, you're gonna keep spinning in that direction until you provide a counter thrust. However, if you have gyros on your creation, if you input left to roll left and then you let go of that input, I think it is going to dampen that roll so that you don't have to counter the input every single time. So it's going to have an automatic dampener built into it, which is just going to make it feel more like you're flying a plane in space. And remember, all of this stuff, if you don't use it, you don't have to deal with those things. You can still have a completely no inertia, no drag space experience as well. So we're going to be able to just be as aided or unaided as we want to be in our spacecraft. So I think this part is going to simplify any type of build that we already have, which is really, really great. And it is also going to just make space flight a lot more doable and less frustrating if you don't want to have to deal with every single little thing about the frustrations of space travel. Okay, moving on is this next block, which is the gyro stabilizer. I'll let them intro it real quick.
This is the gyro stabilizer. Kind of works in the same way. You'll notice it's pointy, right?
Yeah.
So when you don't give this input, and this comes back to the whole like Trailmaker space, that there is an up in Trailmaker space.
Okay, so it seems like this is the same exact thing, except this has this arrow here. It is always going to try to orient your vehicle so that this arrow is facing up. So if you're in a non-space map, it's going to be very clear where the up is. If you're in the space map, I think just by looking at the way the planets are designed with the surface of the planets, you'll be able to tell where up is. And I think it still has the same controls as the other gyro that we saw, except this one, when you let go, instead of damping and then leaving you where you left your control, it's actually going to reorient yourself to be level again. So this, I can already think of other applications outside of space. Anything that has to be auto balancing like a motorcycle, this is going to be really, really great for that. Unicycles, if you saw my video yesterday, we did a unicycle battle, and even last week we did a motorcycle battle. So we're definitely going to be revisiting battles like that to see how much simpler and better of a creation we can build with the gyro stabilizer like this. I really, really like it when it's easy to get from 0 to a functional vehicle without having to like go through every little step of like programming and stuff if you don't want to. But if you don't use this block, then you can do all of the auto stuff that you want to with logic and anything else. Okay, up next is probably going to be the most space-specific one, but also the one that is going to make this whole space stuff fun and also tolerable in some cases. So this is called the quantum rudder. Let me let them intro it real quick.
The quantum rudder. It is filled with wonderful space magic and is our attempt at allowing the players to build sci-fi space opera style spaceship. Think Star Wars, Star Trek, Battlestar Galactica, space shooters.
Yeah, so basically what this gives you is almost like a simulated atmosphere in Trailmakers, in space in Trailmakers, because without this on it, if you turned your vehicle in a direction, all you've done is turn it, you haven't given it velocity in that direction. This, however, will redirect your velocity. So it's gonna act kind of like a tail fin on your plane. However, they were very careful to say that this doesn't actually act like you would expect a rudder to work in water.
Don't put this on a hinge. It won't do anything in that regard. It's not a rudder. We call it a quantum rudder, but it doesn't work as a rudder would in water.
So basically what he's saying is that if you put this on any type of moving surface, it's really not gonna work to turn your vehicle. You've probably got to use like gyro stabilizers and things like that, or thrusters to turn your vehicle. But the point being is it essentially adds drag into your vehicle. So if you face it in a direction, it's gonna gravitate towards that is now the forward momentum. And without it, of course, then when you turn your vehicle, forward momentum will still be in whatever direction you were going, no matter what direction the front of your vehicle is facing. So I think that's going to be pretty cool, and this is what's essentially going to allow Star Wars types space flight to happen. I am curious if this will make a difference in a normal Trailmakers map. One thing is this thing does make a trail, speaking of Trailmakers, in the B-roll footage that we have here. So this is the quantum rudder in effect right here. This one is actually, I believe this is an outdated design concept that they have for it, so that's why it looks slightly different. But this trail right here is created by the quantum rudder. I was hoping that we'd be able to change the color of these trails, and it seems that you can change the color of these trails. Whatever color you paint the rudder, that is also going to be the trail color, so that is going to be an awesome feature. So I have another interesting clip here about the rudder. They were showing some concept art and designs and things like that, but they have an interesting thing about it here that explains something that I noticed in the previous B-roll footage. I didn't mention it because I wasn't sure what was going on, but now I have an explanation. All right, so one of the things I was thinking of is if we are in the vacuum of space and there's no actual drag or inertia, then we should be able to theoretically increase our speed indefinitely. As long as we keep inputting thrust, then there's nothing slowing us down. However, if you look at the speedometer here, there's a point here in the video where the thrust is turning on and off, and watch what happens to the speedometer down in the bottom left. You see, it goes up, goes down, goes up. So that doesn't make sense if there's no drag in space. However, now it is explained because listen to what the devs say here.
This block, if you use it, you will experience drag on your structures.
Yeah.
There you go. There you have it. So this is actually going to not just simulate like directional drag, but also just when you're going forward, it's also going to essentially give your vehicle a max speed depending on how much thrust you have into it. So the reasoning that they gave for that was because without this, there is no speed limit theoretically, and if you're trying to have space battles and you end up going 1,000 miles an hour, it's going to be extremely difficult to end up shooting people and have any idea what's going on in space. You essentially need to be able to slow down easily. And by putting drag on your vehicle with this this quantum rudder, it's going to automatically keep you within a speed range, which is just going to make it feel much more you're gonna be able to understand what's going on in space basically a lot better. So speaking of going really, really fast, this map, since you can go fast without the quantum rudders and without the artificial drag, will this map be able to accommodate going that fast? Because you've seen me try to break the sound barrier in all kinds of different ways, and sometimes the limitation is just I hit the end of the map before I can get up to that speed. But here's what the devs have to say about that.
The map is bigger. It's almost circa twice the size on every axis, which means like it's really, really big compared to...
It's by far the biggest map Trailmakers has ever seen, by far.
We want to build on the whole experience on flying really fast if you want to without drag, right? So we have a warp around actually in space. When you reach the end, you will come out on the other side.
So that right there is amazing. So essentially, we're gonna have unlimited map to fly through. There is no bounding box. There is no wall to hit. It'll actually warp you back on the other side. And I can only imagine the types of insane challenges that could happen with this. If you throw something away from you, I hope this applies to objects that don't have seats in it, because I want to throw something and then have it come back and hit me. But also, of course, the more intended use, going really, really fast and keep building up speed until that's kind of the thing. Until what? Is there a limit to this? Could I just set it to go on forever and then leave it and then come back 20 minutes later and be going 2 million miles per hour? Can we reach the speed of light? What happens? There has to be a limit, right? So I'm really excited to test that limit when this update comes out. All right, and then this is a little tidbit that I think is important for people to know. It's not necessarily the most positive bit of information, but I think it's better to know it now than be surprised when the update comes out, and that is this right here.
I kind of want to go into, once again, saying there is no orbital gravity in this map.
All right, so apparently no creating orbits like a Kerbal Space Program style. And I think that makes sense because they do have an up direction. You can clearly see there is a top of the planet with a flat surface. So orbiting doesn't necessarily make as much sense, I guess. But I am curious what happens when you drive off of the edge of a flat planet. Actually, I don't know how the game's gonna handle that, because clearly they have their own, they've already said that the different moons and stuff have their own type of gravity. So when you drive off the edge, shouldn't that gravity still exist in some sense? All right, I'm really curious to play around with that. How does gravity work at the edge of a moon? But I think the main point is you're not going to be doing orbits in this particular type of space. Okay, so now they ended up showing some footage, some new footage that was not in the original B-roll, showing the application of these different inertia blocks. So what we're seeing right here, it says no inertia blocks. This is essentially the default physics of the Trailmakers space, which is essentially close to real space physics.
Here's a spaceship without any of the inertia blocks attached. And as you can see, it's not really going anywhere. This is...
Yeah, so the main point they're trying to illustrate here is this is why they didn't want to rely on completely just realistic space, because it's extremely disorienting. It's really hard to tell how fast you're going and in what direction you're going, because there's not a lot of reference frames to go based off of. So building something without any inertia blocks, without any type of controls other than just thrust or resistance, is just going to be really, really hard. But now they show here, this is just a gyro on this. So you can see with this one, he's able to rotate, he's able to roll left and right using the gyro block, and it looks like it feels very natural. And then here we go. Now we have the gyro just like it was before, and now added quantum rudders, because if you see, even with the gyro, when he's turning, he's still going in one direction. See, even now he's turning backwards, but he's still constantly going in the direction of the momentum. Once you add the quantum rudders in, now it magically starts to feel like you're flying a Star Wars ship, because you see where the nose is pointing, that is where the direction of momentum is redirected instantly. And the cool thing about the quantum rudders, so first of all, you see this is an orange trail instead of the blue trail we saw in the previous footage. You can see the shape of the quantum rudder is different. One thing I noticed is that when the quantum rudders are redirecting force, it seems like the stronger that they redirect force, it actually glows. Watch when the vehicle turns. See? Look at that. So now here's an interesting one. This is a gyro stabilizer added. So that is the one that has the upwards direction. There's something weird that happens here that he explains, and I think I understand why, but I'm just gonna give my hypothesis and maybe I'll be wrong about it, but let's watch what's happening first.
With the gyro stabilizers, it's slower at turning here.
Yeah.
And here I actually let go. So as you can see here, I'm turning around here. And then when I'm like 180 degrees around, I actually let go of the key. So I'm not doing anything there. I'm just hands off the keyboard, and you can see the gyro stabilizer makes the spaceship points up again.
So you can barely see that little arrow on the top of the gyro stabilizer here. When he lets go of the input and presses nothing, it automatically starts rotating back around to the left to orient this arrow upwards. And he pointed out how much slower it was going. And I feel like the reason it would be going so much slower is because the other gyro stabilizer is still there. And from what they mentioned before, the non-arrow based gyro, that has a damping effect, right? Which I think is why this is probably going so much slower, but maybe there's something else going on here with that as well. I'm curious how much faster it would reorient itself if there wasn't a normal gyro there. And I'm also curious if there's like a strength setting that we can set on these stabilizers to set how strong they will actually stabilize. Kind of like with the helicopter servos, we can set a strength setting as well. Another thing I would like to point out is we are much closer to this spaceship right here. So we can clearly see this is that spaceship from the campaign. And in the last video where I did a deep dive into the B-roll, I tried to zoom in on a little orb thing next to it, but it was so far away and grainy that I couldn't tell if it was a man-made object or just another asteroid. But now I think we can see here confirmed it is some type of space station. So that is actually a man-made object and not an asteroid. So glad to have that confirmation here with this closer view. So another thing I noticed with some of the B-roll that they showed in this stream was this looks like a new part here, doesn't it? A sort of like satellite radar spinny thing. So that looks kind of cool. It looks, I'm curious, it doesn't look like it rotates on its own. I think it might be on top of a spinning or a rotating servo programmed to do that. So yeah, that's another new piece that should be coming with the space update, which makes sense. It's a very space-themed piece. So here's another important bit of information. People are probably wondering if this is another campaign or just a sandbox, and it's kind of neither. So here's what the devs had to say about that.
Missions?
There are no missions. It's not a campaign like Airborne. It's also not just a sandbox like Danger Zone or Treasure Island. There are elements of storytelling.
Yeah,
like there are
world building, right?
It's world, but there are things to explore. There are NPCs to talk to. There are
NPCs.
Yeah.
But there are no missions. There's not a campaign. There's no objective.
All right, so that is interesting to me that there's not necessarily missions or anything, but there are people to talk to, NPCs to talk to. I'm wondering what that'll entail and if there's any type of gameplay that we can create around those NPCs. All right, and then I know this is probably going to be the most important part for some people. I'm just going to let the devs say it themselves right here.
No release date for now. There is not an official release date. We, of course, have an internal release date, right?
Yes.
But expect very late October, very early November.
All people heard was October.
Yeah, so it'll probably be out like tomorrow, maybe. No, I'm just kidding. Obviously, I think we're probably going to expect November. I'm expecting sometime in November. They said late October, early November. But whenever it comes to release dates, I tend to err on the side of the farther end of release dates. But the fact that they already have an internal release date is promising. That to me kind of indicates that they got their stuff together and that they probably are pretty close to being ready. So I'm expecting that it's probably going to be around early November, I'm saying. So that's like kind of like a month, like just a month away. That's not that far away. So if you guys have any ideas on what challenges you think these blocks would really fit, not only for new challenges, but challenges we've done in the past where balancing or like stabilization were an issue, let me know what you guys think. And what are you most looking forward to using these blocks for in the upcoming Trailmakers update? If you guys enjoyed this video, you'll probably enjoy some more that you can find right here on the end screen. Hope this video has earned your subscription. Anyway, this has been ScrapMan, and I'll see you next time. Bye.